When Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492, many thriving cultures had already been established, such as the Mayans in Central America, the Aztecs in Mexico, the Pueblo in the Rio Grande Valley, and the Anasazi of the American Southwest. Columbus unknowingly set off a cultural revolution in both the Americas and in Europe. Europeans brought over goods to the Americas, including food like sugar, rice, and coffee, domesticated animals like horses, cows, and pigs, and most importantly, diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza, which wiped out 90% of Native Americans. In return, the Americas supplied Europe with metals such as gold and silver and food like corn, potatoes, tobacco, beans, and chocolate. Slaves were brought over from Africa to work the plantations in the Americas. This exchange of goods between Europe, the Americas, and Africa was known as the Columbian Exchange. The Spanish conquistadors were another effect of the discovery of America. The conquistadors were Spanish men in search of fame and wealth, particularly gold and silver. One of the most famous conquistadors was Hernán Cortés, who brought down the Aztec Empire by pretending to be a god. By the late 1500s, Spain had established a powerful colonial empire in the Americas. Spain was not the only country who was interested in the Americas. England was just as eager to profit from its treasures. The first permanent English settlement was established in 1607 at Jamestown, Virginia. It was chartered by the Virginia Company, and the colonists were more focused on searching for gold than finding food, so many died from malnutrition and disease. John Smith eventually took over the colony. Virginia stood on shaky economic grounds until John Rolfe perfected the harvesting of tobacco, which is known as the poor man's crop. Virginia then had trouble satisfying Europe's demand for tobacco. One of the first forms of self-government in America was the House of Burgesses in Virginia. Maryland was the second plantation colony to be founded. It was founded in 1634 by Lord Baltimore and was meant as a haven for Roman Catholics. Carolina was created in 1670 and supplied the West Indies with supplies. Although at first Carolina was one colony, it split into two in 1712. Georgia was the last colony to be founded in 1733. It was established as a buffer colony between South Carolina and Spanish Florida, which was a big reason why it remained the least populated colony even until the American Revolution. In 1620, a group of separatist Puritans landed at Plymouth Bay in the hope of purifying their religion and securing a brighter future. In 1630, a group of non-separatist Puritans established a settlement called the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was fairly close to Plymouth, but largely overshadowed it in population. John Winthrop declared the colony to be a city upon a hill and a beacon to humanity. Although the Bay Colony colonists had left in order to purify their religion, they banished dissenters of Puritanism like Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. Roger Williams then founded Rhode Island after being banished. The first intercolonial unity was the New England Confederation, where four settlements banded together for defense against enemies. William Penn, a Quaker, founded Pennsylvania in 1681. However, the colony was home to many different European religions and ethnicities. In the early Chesapeake region, settlers did not survive for very long. Many died from diseases. However, over time, settlers gained immunity, and by the 18th century, Virginia and Maryland housed thousands of people. The tobacco economy flourished with the help of indentured servants. Life in New England, on the other hand, was completely opposite to Chesapeake. Life expectancy was high, and women had lots of kids. New England was made out of sturdy, tight-knit societies, comprised of mostly villages and farms. As more settlers came to the area, the Puritan zeal diminished, leading to the Halfway Covenant and the Salem witchcraft trials. The Salem witch trials were shockingly cruel. After a group of girls claimed to have been bewitched, the whole town went on a witch hunt, in which 19 people were hanged and one person was pressed to death. Evidence of supposed witchcraft was only based on spectral or invisible evidence. Throughout the 1700s, there was a major population boom in the colonies, mostly through natural increase. However, two dominant minority immigration groups were the Scots-Irish and the Germans. In the 1730s and 40s, the Great Awakening, a religious revival, swept through the colonies. It was ignited by Jonathan Edwards from Massachusetts, after a period of religious decline caused by clerical dullness. George Whitefield, an English parson, was responsible for then spreading the Great Awakening throughout the colonies. In 1734, John Peter Zenger was accused of printing seditious libel against the royal governor. He was defended in court by Alexander Hamilton, who argued that exposing the truth was not libel. Zenger was cleared of charges. This case helped clear the way for the establishment of freedom of the press. England's colonies and France's colonies in America had been clashing for years because of their close proximity to each other, but in 1754 it came to an all-out war, known as the French and Indian War. At first, the war went badly for England, but when William Pitt became leader in Britain, he brought important victories. France was completely overthrown in America by the time a peace treaty was signed in Paris in 1763. Soon after the war, Native Americans led by Chief Pontiac attacked British posts. England quickly retaliated and crushed the Native Americans, but because of this it issued the Proclamation of 1763, which forbade colonists to settle beyond the Appalachians. It was designed to prevent another Indian uprising, but colonists were outraged by it and completely disregarded it, starting the tense and rebellious relationship between America and Britain. Although a complete revolution was not on the colonists' minds, they were angered by the Sugar, Quartering, and Stamp Acts, and wanted a certain degree of home rule. When the Townshend Acts were passed in 1767, which included a tax on tea, the colonists smuggled in items until Britain sent troops to Boston in 1768. This led to the Boston Massacre. Samuel Adams played a huge role in edging the colonies toward revolution. He was invested in politics and was part of the Boston Tea Party in 1773, in which about 100 Sons of Liberty boarded a ship filled with tea and dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston harbor. This rebellious act prompted Parliament to pass the Intolerable Acts in 1774. This in return prompted the colonies to summon a Continental Congress to address the grievances. The Congress did not call for a revolution, but merely asked Britain to stop the taxes, a request which Britain rejected. War officially broke out at the Lexington Massacre. George Washington was selected to head the Patriot Army, not because of his military skills, but rather his leadership skills and his character. Many colonists were still on the fence about the Revolution, but when Thomas Paine published his pamphlet Common Sense in 1776, which called for independence and a new republican government, many people were persuaded to join the Patriot side. On July 4, 1776, America officially declared itself as independent from Britain in the Declaration of Independence. After the victory at the Battle of Saratoga in 1777, Benjamin Franklin finally convinced France to ally with America, providing it much-needed supplies and troops. This alliance finally recognized America's independence and made the Revolution a world war. After 6 years of fighting, the war was technically over in 1781 at Yorktown when the British General Cornwallis surrendered, but Patriot Loyalist fighting continued, especially in the South. The Treaty of Paris of 1783 formally recognized America as independent.